Welcome to Globe Mission Earth webinar this afternoon. My name is Janet Struble, and I am the coordinator or project manager for Globe Mission Earth. I'm happy to present our partner, John Moore. He'll introduce himself a little bit more, and his students, Sriram, Max, and Caleb, will share what they did. I will be monitoring questions in the chat. And since this is a small group, I will be, I think we'll have time for questions at the end. But if you have something that wants to be asked, just put it in the chat and I'll call the attention to the speaker. This recording will be on our YouTube. Since you registered, I will be sending the YouTube link so that you can use it in the future. Okay, John.
Okay, very good. Well, again, I'll echo Janet. Thank you all for being here. We're very excited about. So we're going to, what the agenda today is going to be, I'll just open up with a couple of slides. The real reason we're here today is to hear from the students. Max, Caleb, Sriram will be joining us later. He's a high school junior and he has a math test that he cannot get out of, but he'll be done at 1:30. So you'll see him pop in along the way. So thank you for joining. And I'm going to start my, I can start my slides right here. Yeah. Okay. And then how do I share my screen now?
Green button at the bottom.
So you go back to Zoom. Back to Zoom. Take the meeting here. Share screen. Is that happening?
Not yet.
Okay, so we want to see this one, right?
Present first because that's just the software itself. So you got to present first.
Put it up here.
Yeah, so do that. Click from.
So how do I minimize this? This.
Yeah.
Hit Zoom.
Yeah.
This here.
It's there.
That's this slide. Okay.
Quick screen. Then you have to put it up, right there.
How's that looking?
Looks great.
Okay, then we will get started. Thankfully, I have Caleb here next to me, get me through those high-tech things while Max is laughing at me probably. But so here we are. The focus is on the students today. This is the important part of the project. So those of you, most of you that are on the call today are either participating with us or at least have heard about the CubeSat project. So spend very little time just giving you a brief overview. Janet kind of already told you about, and they'll introduce themselves as they come on. So the A-cube, the 1 point you see underneath of that, is to acquire, analyze, and apply. And that's where the A3 came from. And I was kind of working on that description in use for remote sensing and looking at satellite and satellite data from space, and tried to narrow it down to a small amount of words as possible about what I was doing. Actually, from my wife was trying to explain to somebody what I actually do. And so we got it to the 3 words. You know, it's about acquiring data and then analyzing the data and then the application. So that's where A-cube came from. And then we started working on the CubeSat project when Max came along. And so I'm trying to think of a name for the project, and it just hit me. I literally think I was brushing my teeth one morning and I'm like, A-CubeSat. Okay, that's really corny, but it works. A-CubeSat. So that's where the name comes from, and that's kind of the history behind it. Okay, so I gotta go here. There we go. So just a little bit of history for everybody on board probably knows this, but for the sake of people that may be watching in the future, there is a lot of Earth observing satellites, and this is nothing new. Many people, most of what NASA Earth Science does is have satellites looking at Earth from space. Every year, there are more and more satellites as we begin to look at smaller slivers of things. So like Brian, who's on the call, is working with A3Sat 2, and they're looking at topography. And then there's the orbiting carbon absorber, and there was SMAP looked at soils. Landsat 8 and 9 are up there looking at land cover. CloudSat, you can read about those. So there's more and more data out there. And so one of the things educationally that we support is infusing this into the pre-college curriculums, because it's practically non-existent. So there's things out there, and when we talk about careers, these are all careers of the future, and that's very popular talk now, both in terms of looking at the environmental science aspects, but as well as what we're here for today, the engineering aspects of that. The other big topics that are talked about more and more in the last couple of years, particularly, but have always been around for a number of years, is broadening participation and representing, getting underrepresented groups into these fields. When I was an Einstein Fellow down at NSF in the geosciences, there were two things: looking at the geoscience proposal and enhancing the geoscience education for underrepresented groups. And so now that's 12 years ago. So it's really geared up now. But my experience from when I was teaching is that you get a broad base of people. They will come naturally because you cover a whole spectrum, from environmental type people to coders to computer scientists. All these types of people need to be involved in projects like this. So we believe that a CubeSat project is really fostering that by bringing people together, and the high school students, as you'll meet in a moment, will let you know what that means to them. So this is a slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but you can read it while I'm just talking a minute here. It describes why we started it. So first of all, I want to say this is not a authentic space-ready CubeSat. This is a CubeSat model that replicates the putting together the engineering behind and the experiences at a beginning level, working up, and then can work up to, hopefully someday, maybe at a university mostly, or Dr. Kane's on the line here, and he does this for a living for the Naval Academy, to put those up in the space. And people that like CubeSats are reading more and more about their place in the aerospace community. They've sent them to Mars, they're sending them to the moon, and looking at looking at Earth opportunities. So then I'm glad Kevin Simmons is on there. Hi, Kevin. We spoke, but Kevin and I, Kevin was an Einstein Fellow with me at the same 2 years in NSF, and he's an engineer. So he and I met through a third friend of ours. And he kind of said, you two need to meet, because Kevin's always talking about these CubeSat things, and you're always talking about satellites. So you need to meet each other. So we did. And looking at this kind of was the foundation. So it's 12 years ago, but Kevin still operates Blue Cube Aerospace, which is what came out of those meetings. But more importantly on this slide is Kevin is from Florida. And for teachers that think that pre-college students cannot do it, his school, the Weiss Academy, with Kevin's direction, built and launched a real CubeSat. So that was achieved, and as it says, history in the making. They were the first middle school in America to accomplish that goal. There are a few other high schools in the US that have launched real CubeSats as well. So it's beginning, so it is possible, and that's high level stuff. A CubeSat is being designed as an introductory model to encourage people to come into this, and maybe aspire people to look into, do things maybe they thought they weren't able to do, and to maybe when they start plotting out their college in the future. So this slide real quick is a kind of by picture evolution of a CubeSat. Starting on the left, the red cube there was in talking to a friend of mine about trying how to do this, and they had access to a 3D printer. So that was the first form factor. Second was he put together a couple of items that he thought that I was talking about and needed. And then Max, who you'll meet in a second, came on board. The rendering, which is in the first purple one, was Max took it, completely redesigned it, as he'll explain to you, resulting in the far right, that was the first working model that Max designed and put together. We've explained the team. I mentioned Dr. Kane. Jin is a professor and the head of small satellites at the Academy, Naval Academy. He had you can see the person on the right, Jack, the tallest one there. He's also a high school student, did an internship with the Naval Academy last summer, worked with us. And this is Max and Sriram, who you'll meet in a few minutes. And I took a field trip down there, and also so that the guys could meet Jin in person and see Jin over there on the right. But we spent the day at the Naval Academy, and Jack's working on this project at his high school, which he's in Maryland. And up the top on the right is our innovation lab here, where Max and Sriram and now Caleb, we have another young man, Aiden, that are joining the team. So that's the history and background. So this is the first completed CubeSat that Max designed. And Max, if you are ready, you can take over from here. So I have to stop sharing my screen, right?
No, keep PowerPoint up. I can
Okay,
talk with
just talk over it. Okay.
In fact, could you go back one slide for me real quick?
That one?
I swear to you, I own other shirts. I swear to you.
That's your CubeSat shirt.
Yes, this is my sure. I swear I own other shirts. Okay, you can go back to the other side now. Just something I just noticed. So I'm Maxwell Friedman. I've always been interested in engineering, hence why I'm doing this. I currently am going to the Worcester Polytechnic Institute of Technology, or Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI, in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I've been continuing to work on this project even from here. I've worked since for over 2 years now on this project. It all started a little bit pre-COVID, and we got the groundwork in. I made the frame for it, figure out what parts I need to order, and then something interesting happened. Things shut down for a little bit. I can't really remember what was going on at that time, but some things changed, and a few months later, we were able to pick up the project again and hit the ground running. And now, here's where we are. Basically, I got involved with the A3Sat Project because of John Moore. I went to a technical high school in my area, which John Moore used to teach at, and he contacted my engineering teacher at the time, who was able to connect him with me. We met at the school with my school's employment officer, and we were able to set up times for me to come into work and start working on this project. And that was just such a great experience in high school to get to work on a project, real engineering, while I'm still going and taking engineering classes at my high school. And that's something that not a lot of students get to do. You know, not a lot of schools have an opportunity to go outside and work in a field while you're still in high school. And not a lot of schools even have an engineering program. And if they do, it's usually a one-off class. You know, there are tons of young makers out there, kids who are interested in engineering, who are going beyond the classroom to learn about engineering. They're playing with 3D printers. They're using Arduinos. They're experimenting with Raspberry Pis. They're learning how to code. And that's not something that's always present in class time. It's something I always did in my free time. And I know that there are a lot of students who do it in their free time. I know there are a lot of students because I had friends who did it in high school. I have coworkers now who were just like me when they were in high school, where they were going to class and then they come home and they'd play with an Arduino or they'd mess around with some Python code. And now, especially being in college, where everyone here is really interested in engineering and technology, I know there's a lot of students out there. But unfortunately, beyond the school's maybe robotics club or the one-off hour of code that we all had in middle school nowadays, and maybe high school, it's not really present, at least in my experience. And I think that things need to evolve where students can actually get experience with this in the classroom, where they can try and mess around with code. They can try and use microcontrollers. And I see that happening now, and that's great, but it's not super widespread. It's great when a student can go outside the classroom and they can learn about engineering and technology on their own, but not every student even has that opportunity to get access to those materials. So while some students are, very often engineering is something that falls by the wayside. You might not even, if you choose to go to college, then that might be your first experience really learning it. You might not even realize that that is your passion until you get a true experience with it. And that's one of the things that we're kind of hoping to bring to the classroom with the A3Sat project, or even just the awareness of engineering and engineering projects within school. Beyond engineering, it's also STEM. We're including technology, we're including mathematics if you go through the data analysis. And obviously the science, because everything is being monitored with environment. It can be hard within a rigid school system where everyone believes that there needs to be a clear lesson plan, that there needs to be a clear learning objective. But in the real world, that's not the case. And it's one of the things that's always frustrated me as a student, that you don't need to say, here, I'm giving this lecture, I'm giving this lesson, and this is what you're supposed to take out of it. People do things and they take what they need out of it. Any engineer will tell you that you learn more from your failures than you do from your success. By experimenting with technology, by playing with code, because the worst case scenario, if you're running code, you rerun it, you change things. It's most of the time not going to break anything in a substantial way. It's a safe environment to learn. And you're going to mess up. You're going to need to go on Stack Overflow and try and figure out what's going wrong with your code. But by doing so, you're going to learn so much more. So in the everyday classroom where you're just being told what you need to know, where you're given a lesson plan that has an outcome, your learning is so much more finite. And what I'm really trying to say is that with projects like this, where yes, we're asking you to build this kit, we're asking you to install our code, but in reality, it's becoming more of a platform where you can develop your own code, experiment with the data you're collecting. You might be trying to prove your own hypothesis with what you're collecting, but you have that you can go over the data, see, oh, wait, this doesn't actually match up with what I was expecting to see. The teacher didn't choose your hypothesis for you or your experiment for you. You're coming up with it and either finding something that supports your theory or not. And I think that being able to provide hands-on time with STEM, being able to provide time for students to just experiment and work in a very low consequence environment is what gives the real opportunity for learning. It gives the real opportunity for students to discover an interest in STEM or expand their interest in STEM. And I think that the A3Sat project fits really well into that. It focuses on 3D printing, something that more schools are adopting nowadays, but doesn't usually go beyond the, hey, design one thing and we're going to 3D print it and here you go. I worked at a summer camp where I taught a class in 3D printing, and that's exactly where it went. It was, hey, design a key in CAD and I'm going to 3D print it. Okay, cool. You didn't actually take that the step further and say, okay, how does this apply to what I'm trying to do? The acquire, analyze, and apply of it. And then you go into things like coding. Right now, this is written in Python. The data analysis can be done in any coding language you want. And being able to experiment that, I know that Nicola was telling me before that she is working to teach Python to some of her students, or working on Python-based programs with some of her students, and that's great to hear. Python's a great language for picking things up, but being able to go beyond that 1 hour of code, if you're familiar with it, which we all have received in high school nowadays, and being able to go beyond that and actually teach classes in it, or let kids just play around with it. You don't need to have a teacher that is proficient in it per se. even in any field of engineering, but that is willing to give the time to allow their students to work on it. John, if you want to expand on that, because I know that's kind of what you did when you worked at BCIT.
Yeah, so part of looking at it from an educational point of view, I, as well as Max, and now it's very becoming very popular, career technical education. I knew I always had an unfair advantage because we had 2.5-hour classes, had students, the same students for 4 years. So that gave us the opportunity to really identify the skills and the passions of the individual and allow them to run with that and develop personally. And I found out by just accident, I guess, that a lot of my students exceeded more than I expected from them, exceeded more than they ever thought they were capable of. And even guidance counselors and my school administrators, were very happy at what they're able to achieve. Max, why don't you speak a moment on the sensors, since these are globe people, and the relationship of the CubeSat to collecting the environmental data and the choices that you made there.
Absolutely. So on the front of the board right here is the EnviroPlus sensor. This is an all-inclusive sensor that monitors temperature, humidity, light, oxidation and reduction, barometric pressure, if I didn't say that, and as well as 2 cameras on the bottom. One is a normal camera, and one is a camera without the infrared filter, so you can compare the received infrared light to just visual light. All of that is being recorded on a Raspberry Pi on the inside with its own power supply and a device which connects the 2 cameras to the Arduino, the Raspberry Pi. And through that, we're able to log data at a very rapid rate and record video as well as take pictures. All of this data can be downloaded or uploaded to the inside of the Raspberry Pi, or if you put a flash drive inside right here, it will transfer all that data over, and that can be analyzed with external programs. So right now, our ground station program, which wirelessly sends the data over internet, because this device generates its own Wi-Fi signal that you can connect to. It transmits all of that data as well as some health information about the device, like the CPU temperature, the current performance, and other factors like that. It transmits its data as well as the pictures that it collects. And either by using the ground station software or connecting to it directly, you can parse through the data and analyze it with different programs. And that's one of the biggest aspects of where coding and data analysis comes into the A3Sat project. I know personally one experiment that I did just as a test to see if I can do it was the Palmyra Cove Nature Park, where we work, is on the Delaware River, where we have a small, call it beachfront, and on which there are shells that have different coatings on them, and some are more reflective than others. So when I flew this on a drone over the beach area, I was able to see, when comparing the visual and more infrared cameras, that certain shells were more reflective than others because they bounce the light from the sun much more. And those stood out in the infrared, and I was able to overlay it with the visual camera, which was a very interesting view that I was able to receive with the A3Sat project. Taking that a step further, we're already looking towards the future for the A3Sat. We're kind of planning the next version and what that's going to look like and how it's going to work with schools. We're taking feedback from the schools that we're communicating with and learning that there are some challenges out there. Schools very often have like restrictive computer policies that prevent certain features that we might be looking to use. And we're looking to make the next version more compatible with that. For one thing, we're probably going to be switching to a microcontroller versus a Raspberry Pi. We're looking to make our own custom circuits that operate the device. And we're going to simplify the construction. And the reason, which kind of sounds counterintuitive to experimenting with engineering, is because we are looking to make this more of a platform than what is currently here. Well, yes, you can write your own code and analyze your own data. We want to make it so that students are actually taking the next step and doing their own engineering projects. The next version will include an area for student payloads, where we are able to transmit the data of that students are collecting with their own engineering designs wirelessly, longer range with LoRa, and being able to allow students to take that next engineering step beyond what we're doing now to design things and experiment with their own parameters. We're also looking to hopefully maybe take a focus on high altitude balloons with this program. John, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty good. What we're going to do now, while hopefully Sriram's going to be on any minute now, I'm going to introduce you to Caleb. And we also have another student, Aiden, who worked on the project. They're from Palmyra High School, which is literally 1 mile from our center here. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we go back to the full screen here. And I'm going to slide out of the way and then introduce you to Caleb and Aiden, who will hopefully talk about how you got drugged into this with me. So,
John,
yes.
we have a question. I don't know if you want to answer it now.
Okay.
From Brian Campbell. What are the interval times for the sensor measurements? And is there a set of interval times for data collection by the sensors? So I didn't know if Max can answer that, or.
I hope he can.
Yes.
I know the
So
answer.
currently, so
Max-
we're working right now to make the intervals more controllable. Currently, it is based on the processing time, which is actually largely affected by the SD card that you have inside the device and its read-write speeds. And that's really something we want to get away from because we want more accurate data collection. However, the video is recorded at a constant 20 frames per second, and the images are taken in sequence with the data being collected. Everything being timestamped as well.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to introduce you to boys, and I'm happy to see Sriram is logged on. So Sriram, stand by. We'll get to you in a moment. I'll introduce you, but I'm going to let Caleb and Aiden speak for a minute or two.
I'm Caleb. I
Talk nice and loud like you do in the cafeteria.
I'm Caleb. I started work with John in the middle of October. I got to meet Max and Sriram just and learn about the project. I fell in love with it because I got to do a lot more 3D modeling than I usually can at school. We only have, at Palmyra, we really only had one course that had any 3D modeling in it, and I took that basically my first year of high school thinking that there was more. And I know as after taking that course, I kind of slowly drifted away from it because I didn't really have anything to 3D model. Because I like, when I model something, I like to have it, build it with a purpose. And when, like Max said earlier, when you take those courses, it is just, you make the model and then they'll print it. And I never realized how much work it would take, like just dealing with 3D printer. If there happens to be a problem, how do I fix it? It's usually just send the model, the teacher will figure it out for you. And learning that, I learned more here just messing with 3D model, trying to print it, than I really could have at school. It really bridges some things together that the school system right now just does not offer in any sense.
Mm-hmm. And Aiden, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Not quite sure what I can add. Hello, I'm Aiden Haynes. I basically was called down to this little thing, and it was like four kids there. Our principal asked for the smartest techie people teachers knew, so it was just 4 of us, and then 2 of us actually stuck around. So this is my friend Caleb. I'm more, while he's more like design and build the thing, I like to play around with software more. So I program in Python, and what my goal here is I would like to try to get, with the Raspberry Pi, I'd like to try to make it faster and transfer data in a more intuitive way, make it cleaner. So I'd like to set up the Pi as its own REST API. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's where a client requests to the server and then it sends back. The current method is over a socket connection, which can be unstable.
Yeah, good. Good. So both Aiden and Caleb are seniors this year, so I'll be losing them. And then what they didn't tell you is the first day they came, and by the way, Sriram, who you're going to meet in a minute, and Caleb and Aiden all come volunteer after school with me. They have Sriram, who you're going to meet, has over 350 hours of volunteer time with me. But back to Aiden and Caleb for a second. So they looked at the kit the first day they came over here. Max was here at the time. And Aiden said, I was going to get them to take it to their teachers. And he said, can I just take it? Can we just take it home? So I'm like, oh, okay, what the heck? So they took it home, came back in 2 days, and it was all built. And Aiden was already trying to convince Max that he had better ideas than Max did and how to do, as he just said, make things faster and cleaner. So if there's any doubters out there, and I will say this live on this webinar, I am dead in the water without these young men, because all I brought to the table was the value of CubeSats and the educational applications. These guys figured everything else out. So we're saving maybe the best for last, Sriram. Sriram is a junior in Simmons High School, which is another local high school here. And he is a software, I will say it out loud, genius. And he completely designed the ground station. And before I forget to say this, he just participated in a national Congressional app challenge in the whole United States. Each congressperson can hold that in their district, and the app for the CubeSat that he totally designed is our representative. And in a month or two, they'll be looked at in DC. So if you go on if you Google the Congressional App Challenge and look under New Jersey, you can see Sriram has an excellent 3-minute video of what he did. But I am beyond proud of these guys, and especially Sriram. Now, my role too is Max took like a year to design all this stuff, and then Sriram came in and they hooked up together. And as soon as they were done, they said, okay, here, John, here it is now. And I'm like, yeah, but there's only one problem, is that with real satellites, you can't fly them down on a drone and download the data. So is there any way that this can communicate? And they rolled their eyes, and Sriram says, well, give me a couple minutes. And then he started on this. So that's your introduction, Sriram. Go ahead and please explain the ground station to our friends here.
Hey, I don't know if you guys can hear me currently.
Okay.
Okay, sweet. I'm currently in school. So so the ground station. So originally when Max first introduced the CubeSat to me, it was completely like you would take out the SD card and then plug it in your computer. But since we had the Raspberry Pi, we wanted to do something with data transmission and having a ground station to have that sort of component and element to the CubeSat kit and process. And it's more fun than just pulling out an SD card, seeing your pictures in real time coming in while the drone's still in the sky. So we worked on designing the ground station so it could communicate directly with the Raspberry Pi. So Max carried the Raspberry Pi end of data transmission, and so what we're still doing is that we're using the Wi-Fi hotspot from the Raspberry Pi. So we connect a computer to the Raspberry Pi, to the Wi-Fi network emitted from the Raspberry Pi. And then once we do that, we can click connect on the ground station app, and it links straight to the CubeSat. And then from there, we can just start streaming in live data. And I additionally added live graphs and altitude tracking, and we get the infrared images and the images in real time as well. So like in the one question on the Zoom was the interval time. So it's 7 seconds for data logging, like obtaining the data. But like when it's at its max height, it's around 20 seconds for the data to like fully transmit to the computer. So that's around the time it takes when the drone is still at its max height in the sky. So I think I can share my screen for all the code, but yeah, here. So yeah, we coded this entirely in Python, and the primary reason why we did this is because it's a really easy language to learn quickly, and that allow students to like use the data, manipulate the data, and also edit the code to their own will. So I think a couple of students are already changing the code so that they can adapt it to their own purposes. But yeah, so we're like working, we have a second version already. So here's the second version. Oh wait, I just realized it's only sharing one aspect. I'll share the second version right now. But yeah, so here's the ground station. So on the top here, this is where the regular images stream in. The bottom is where the infrared images stream in. And then you can see the altitude. So you can also download all of your data in an Excel file so that students can further manipulate the data, graph it, and do some sort of data analysis with it. So that will apply their skills in data analysis. And we also got data graphs. I don't know if you can see it because I'm not sharing my whole screen.
No, we can't.
Yeah.
We saw white boxes.
Gotcha. So I'll share everything. I don't know which screen it's sharing though.
We can see
see the data?
there, figure 1, it says temperature, pressure,
Yeah,
humidity.
sweet. Yeah. So that's the yeah. So you can we have like real-time data graphing as well. So each time the data gets sent, it updates live here, and you can see it track over time. You can also do like for data analysis and zoom in. Obviously, there's no data since I don't have the AQSat on me, but when you do get the data streaming in, you can see all the plot in real time, and you can analyze that, and you can also there's an altitude graph as well. So this is 3D plotting. So you can see how the CubeSat travels in altitude. And yeah, so that's some of the new features we added. And then let me see if I can show the Excel file. But yeah, once you finish once you finish streaming in all of the data, you can just stop it and then download the data at any point in time as well. And it'll log all the data there. So desktop. And then you can see the file here. But yeah, so by allowing like students to obtain the data themselves, see the graphs in real time and all that, they're really able to apply their like data analysis skills. And since, yeah, you can see the stuff there. And then since this is all coded in Python, like they can actually start like delving into the nitty gritty of how the software works and how it interacts with the CubeSat. And Python is a really, really good data analysis. I'm going to argue that it's the best like data analysis programming language. You like very much need it for any like artificial intelligence is also very dependent, if not only dependent on Python. So by introducing Python as a language to students, it'll allow them to get a first taste of computer science programming, and also just start delving deeper and deeper into computer science as a whole. So yeah, that's basically a very brief rundown of how the software works and interacts and its functions currently. We're thinking about upgrading it further into like a web app version instead of Python basis. So the Python will still be available, but we're going to go more into JavaScript, so it's more reliant and steady. And so that it can also scale well as we like get it to more schools and schools. So instead of getting it as each individual software application, it'll be a more connected network by a web-based browser. So yeah, that's what we're currently thinking about doing for version 3 of the ground station. And we also have our current version 1 that everyone has is, let me see if I can present my screen again. Here you go. So you can see the ground station compiled app here as well. So this is our original first version. We did update it quite a bit since then, but yeah, so it comes in like .exe, so it's like an app on Windows or it's an app on Mac OS, not Chrome OS yet, not likely, but Mac OS and Windows. And yeah, we can just connect live, and everything is fully like developed, and we're trying to, as we transition into like a web-based browser that allows students, regardless of device or technical or like the capabilities of the computer, to start processing the data. Since this like the app right now is a bit computationally intensive since it's coded, and it's not the most efficient since it's in Python. So as we transition into a web-based application, we're hoping that more and more students, regardless of their computer requirements or like how advanced their technology is, they can still use the CubeSat project and make it more equitable.
Okay, on this slide, what you just showed us, we only could see white boxes again.
Yeah, so I mean, they would be filled if we connected the CubeSat and got it running. But yeah, so the white boxes
Okay.
are when like the images pop up. So as soon as you the data starts streaming in, it'll pop up with like little images of like the ground or like whatever land cover you're analyzing.
Great, thanks. And so some globe connections, we're using the globe observer to do the ground measurements in all, the land cover, clouds and so forth, to get this idea of being able to take a ground level, fly the drone up. And we figured out that if we fly it to 350 feet, I think it was, right, Max, that we could get a 1 pixel image. And Mike Jabot, Dr. Jabot over there has helped us with flipping that into GIS. So today we're talking about mostly all the work that's going behind the Inquire. And then, as you've heard several of them say, they're looking at how to make it better. And then the middle part on the analyze, Sriram just explained a lot of how that data will be analyzed. But looking at trying to create these layers so we can go from a ground observation with the Globe Observer apps, fly a drone. And by the way, we fly it with a drone, but you could do it with a tethered balloon, no problem. And that's a little bit cheaper and less scary to a lot of people. But then that data can also be looked at like from the satellites on my second slide to compare. Like on the cloud app, for instance, if you do the ground, most of you probably use that, you do the ground observations. And then if you're in the sequence when the overhead fly, they send you back the satellite image. So students have 3 layers of reference. And we're thinking about it, Brian, but quite haven't figured out how Max can fly that over trees and get tree height. So we're looking at the established major globe programs and figuring out first on the apply, how to apply them to some of the ongoing projects that many of you are the head of and do such great work. So there was something else I was going to say and I forget what it was already. That's not unusual for me. So I know if most of you have direct contact with me, but if there's teachers looking at this in the future, one of the questions might come up. It's a teacher question, is how much does this cost? Our cost at building it was about $250, plus we had to ship it to our first pilot testers, which Globe Mission Earth sponsored. Now though, we're saying it's, well, that was priced out when Raspberry Pis were about $40. Now it's like going out to eat on a fish dinner is market price today. So looking at buying more kits, Max and I've looked around a little bit too. They're right today, if you wanted to do this, it's about $150 just for the Raspberry Pi. And that's if you can get it. So Nicola, who's on line here too, is been waiting, and she's anticipating a March, I think you said to us yesterday, delivery. So she's waiting, and she's got her fingers all crossed that, because she's got that in her plans to move with the students. And so so Nicole is one of our international people, and also many of you know Charles from Kenya. So he has a kit that he's working with the Kenyan space station. And the Globey people out there, you remember seeing, I might have been to annual year in review and the film about Charles and the student he worked with out out of the city area. I don't know what they officially call it, but and it was a young woman who he worked with and delivered a weather station. And they were all excited. And that young lady at the very end, when their interviewer was saying, you know, something like, you know, well, I love this and this is so inspiring, blah, blah, blah. And this gives me hope that someday I will be able to go to space. And that was extremely inspiring to me. As soon as I heard that, I got in contact with Charles and said, you know, okay, let's hope, you know, let's give her her dream here. Charles and other people within the GLOBE program, they're little groupies of mine. So a lot of people don't know this, but at the annual meetings after the big dinner, there's been 3 or 4 or 6 of us meeting on the sofa, talking about this, and they've been bugging me for many years. Okay, John, like, stop talking about it and let's go. So it took me to meet these young men, high school students that designed, built, rebuilt, and improved on this project. And I think especially for this week of National Engineering Week, shows you what young people can do. And I would gladly debate any teacher that thinks that their students cannot do this. So they're going to do that. And Nicole is there. She's going to be working with how many? 7 universities, and she works at an all-girls school. So we've been looking for the females. If any of you know females that fit into this motley crew here, send them our way. We can work with them via Zoom, because all the young people have just spent 2 years being experts in that. But so that's really where we are. And so if anybody has questions, I'll be quiet and you can ask questions. And if not, then, you know, we'll break webinar history and end 5 minutes early. So
Yes, you can unmute your mic if you'd like and ask your question. Mike.
So I got to start out this way. Wow, that is absolutely amazing. I just have a really dumb question. What did the final weight of the payload end up being?
The final weight of the version 1 right now, we're still kind of planning version 2, so I have no idea where that's going to end up. Probably actually maybe later. But version 1 is, I believe, 0.7 or 0.8 pounds. So it is perfectly able to go on a. Actually, I should probably weigh it at some point.
That's
Again, but
it's all about the
we've done-
kites, Max.
Yes,
Max,
I know.
it's all about the kites.
I should not be flying it because last time I did, I crashed into a building. But
We did that one time. We were working at the very beginning. Max and I were in direct contact with Jeff and Andy.
Yep.
Max designed and built a 3D modeled adapter to the Aerospace stick, I'll call it. And the weight tolerance was that, because we met with Andy and Jeff and they said it's got to be under 2 pounds for the biggest kite. So I think Max found out that doing the engineering was way easier than flying one of those big kites. So as he just said, we didn't have the guts in it. We just had the plastic form factor, but we ended it in a great tailspin, crash into the building. And but we'll go back to that. So we're going to go through kite school, and then maybe we'll put that up on a kite. But that was our original plan, was the option between drone, tethered balloon, or the Aerocat kite, because we wanted to incorporate those people. And perhaps with, I see Christine's back with us, and Jin flies high altitude balloons. So we're maybe going to play with him this summer, and Christine. So we're experimenting there, see if it will survive that ordeal. So,
and then to kind of, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, if you're using the direct readout station, is it still recording to an SD card?
Yes,
So
everything's
kind of
still
as a
being
backup,
recorded
okay.
locally, and everything, all the data is being recorded on the ground station and on the CubeSat. All the videos being recorded on the CubeSat. All the pictures are on the CubeSat, and all the pictures are also on the ground station. So the only thing that's not being sent to the ground station is the video, because that is a lot of data. I saw a question that kind of ties into about the range. Currently, the range is limited because we are creating a Wi-Fi signal. We've found that we were able to go to the full 400 legal limit of the drone and still receive. In fact, we actually think we could have gone further, but you know, there are laws. Our next version that we're planning will use a LoRa device, which I'm currently using in high-powered rocketry at my school, and it is very successful going long distances. So we're not really that concerned about range once we make that switch.
Can you
Thanks.
see the chat, John?
I just saw it pop up. Now I can see it. Yeah, so I don't want to butcher your name. Goya, is that how you would say your name? You can unmute and speak if you'd like.
Oh, she said she was having difficulties.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if she
Yeah,
can.
so there's the information. So yeah, she's working with Charles over in Kenya. And Charles just was communicating with me in the last couple of days, and they're having a space expo over there in June, and they're going to push this out, hopefully, there. And so it's starting to go, spread. Dr. Kane Jin and Christine at the Naval Academy. Jin has sent it at request to West Point, but we haven't heard back from them, but they were snooping around. And Jin and his colleagues, by the way, are doing a lot of research and publishing a paper he'll be presenting at the SmallSat conference in July or August. And looking at what we've developed it's called a 3-tier system. So we're actually using a CubeSat platform as tier 1. That's the introduction. Tier 2 is getting their hands on some of the real stuff. And then tier 3 is used at the Academy in years 3 and 4, where their challenge or assignment is to actually build and launch a CubeSat through his division there for the Navy. So we got other people. I met Jin, I should say, when he was at a Drexel professor. Then he abandoned me too and became a professor at the Naval Academy. So I had to leave him alone for a year or two. But he's wrong. So he and I've tagged along with him on high altitude balloons. Kevin, who was on before, has done high altitude balloons. So we're pulling the resource together. And so, I want to say that it's not all about us. It's about this collaboration and pulling all these pieces in, because my goal is one thing. I think this is, in my 40 years in education, this is the most innovative piece of instruction activity that I've ever been involved with. And it gives me greater pleasure that it was, as I said, created by and improved upon by high school students. Now we adults just need to apply it and encourage other people to see their pathways. I took Sriram with me, as you saw in the picture, down in the Naval Academy, and Christine, we're trying to get him to sign on the dotted line. He's already got a congressman's support and a 1570 on his SATs. So he should be in the running there somewhere. But yeah, and then as things work out too, so Jin's in the CubeSats, obviously. So he has his PhD from Stanford, and his advisor was, guess who? Professor Bob Twiggs, who invented or was co-invented the CubeSat. So we've talked to him. One of our goals from the very beginning was we didn't want this to be a toy. And so Jin and Professor Twiggs have examined it and classified it as about as accurate experience as one can get without doing the real deal. So we're very proud of that. And hopefully you become part of our team and in your own little networks, push at that. And I think we can it's a good way to introduce pre-engineering into the pre-K schools.
Just before
So-
we go, I'd like to answer Nicole's question real quick.
Yep.
Good.
you explain it real quick? I didn't understand the second half of it.
Oh, my mic's undone. So I said CubeSat. I was meaning A3Sat. The
Yeah,
one
yeah.
going on the balloon in the summer.
Mhm.
Do you need an? You know how you were saying you can see the pictures coming live? That's from. So that's from the connection already in the Pi, yeah. But that only goes so far.
Yes.
So
yeah,
in
we
the one
receive
that's
our-
in the balloon, I was just gonna say the one that going in the balloon. Are you gonna try and get data from that live? Would that need an aerial if it's going up into the sky?
I don't know what you mean by an aerial, but we'll probably be using a different transmitter because right now we're just using a Wi-Fi signal. So
I
we'll
was just gonna
transmit
say, yeah.
Max.
What do you need to go up into the sky? Well, how far does it go? Wi-Fi doesn't go that far, does it?
No, yeah. So we'll have to switch our transmission technique. Jack, who was at the Naval Academy over the summer, worked on implementing LoRa, which is it's a proprietary communications device, which we can have one on the ground station and one on the CubeSat and transmit. I believe it's rated for 2 miles, but it's pretty decent, especially if you've got a good antenna.
Okay. Excellent.
Any other questions?
Okay, well,
Thank you guys
for
so much.
joining in, and we'll see you down the road, hopefully. Thank you, Janet, for supervising all of us here.
Do we get to hear what happens after you do the one with the balloon?
Absolutely. There will be
Sure.
an update.
You can have another seminar and like photos and things.
Oh,
Because
that would be a
bummed
great
we didn't get to
idea. Yes.
Yeah, we didn't get to see the kite crash. That would have been. We want to see. We want to see.
I don't
all
think
the
anyone
gear.
wants to relive that moment, but
Max, I crashed my drone, so don't feel bad. I mean, well, I may not have crashed the kite, I have crashed the drone, so.
You
there-
can't
we have
crash a
we have a
you
picture
can't crash
table
a
of all the
balloon, can you?
wreckage. I laid out all the wreckage on a table and sorted through the
Oh,
stuff. So it was a fun day. Fun day.
you can't crash a balloon, can you?
Not as fast as I crashed the kite.
But you can lose it. Yeah, you can lose
Lose
it.
the balloon.
Oh, you can lose it.
Yeah, so when you do high altitude balloon, take this piece of advice, don't have your name or institution anywhere on it. So I'm not going
Ours
to
landed about
tell
50.
stories out of school, but
Yeah.
trust me, you want to not do that, or put, Mike Jabat's name on it or something.
Yeah, ours landed about 53 miles as the crow flies from where we launched.
But
Not
it's-
ideal. Somebody found it for us.
So are worth every headache.
We at Westminster School, just across from me, they do high altitude balloons. But the trouble is to do it, it's very tricky doing it with schools because you've only got 48 hours notice with the weather for a start. And if you're going to organize a trip, if anyone here is a school teacher, it's quite difficult to organize a school trip, risk assessments and so forth. So 48 hours is not really enough time. You'd have to have all these backup days. And even then, you've got to chase it. So if we let it go from central London, it's going to land in like Brighton. I mean, you can't sort of take time off school to go and chase something to Brighton and then come back, but also give 48 hours notice in case you might not go. So it's quite tricky to organize that in a school scenario.
We lost ours, Nicola. We were
Well.
trying to chase it and we lost.
And was
lost
it
sight of
expensive payload?
No, not bad. So we were lucky. We had, as John pointed out, we had our name on it, so they contacted
They
us.
found it, yeah.
Yeah.
If it goes in the sea, then you're kind of done, aren't
You're
you?
done. You are
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
Jin's story on that, the first balloon we couldn't find. We knew we were within 50 feet of it, but they don't have flashing lights. We searched all over through the weeds, couldn't find it. So we just gave up, came home, but then check this out. So 2 months later, this woman calls me and she found it in her backyard. But guess what? She happens to be a physics teacher and was talking all about this stuff. And she goes, "Are you the guy that has this?" And I said, "Well, that depends on what you're going to say next." But, so that was just, there's so many things in this project that, can classify as a miracle, how things came together. It's just astounding. So we did eventually get it back. And then the second launch I did with Jin, we actually got back, but it's always good to do that with students. He had his graduate students there. because they're not afraid to run through the cornfields out in Lancaster County to find the thing, which we did. So, but the images, you know, the high altitude balloons go up to somewhere around 100,000 feet. And for a student to see pictures literally from space, it's just, you know, if I say that and watching a live rocket launch, if that doesn't excite you, there's nothing else I can do for you. You know, go pick another career. And I'll help you do that because I'm a nice guy.
John, you ought to reach out to Jeff and give a talk to the tethered flight, the NASA tethered flight group.
Yes, down there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's very cool.
Well, thanks for hanging on past 2. And again, thanks to John and his students, Max, Caleb, Aiden, and Sriram for sharing your information. And we look forward to updates on what is happening.
Thank everyone so much for coming.
Yes, thank
Well
you.
done. Fantastic.
Okay, take care,
you.
everyone. We'll see you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. It was great.